Artistic responses to the war. The art of the early to mid-20th century tells a lot about the society of that time. Initially, many of the artists were in favor of the war because of the rise in nationalism and patriotism. Many artists themselves fought in the war. Because of this, many of the pieces show first-hand reactions to the fighting. As well, many of the artists transitioned from their previous enthusiasm for war. Artists of this time used their artwork to express their feelings of trauma as a means of communication. Artists began experimenting with surreal and unknown or unconventional forms of art. After World War I, the people wanted to draw their focus away from the way the world was. World War I was said to be the war to end all wars, and the people wanted to make that a reality by changing their society, including their artwork. Many artist groups such as the Surrealists and Expressionists focus less on realistic paintings, depicting specific scenes where the emotions and purpose of the artwork is more straightforward, but rather focusing on dreams and surreality and the emotion of the art rather than the image itself. Surrealism was one of the most significant art movements to come out of the interwar period between World War I and World War II. It is based in expressing ideas in a dreamlike or exaggerated manner in order to show the concept of something rather than a realist approach to it. Surrealist artists create strange representations of real-life objects. A good example of this is Dali's clocks. Salvador Dali was famous for his paintings depicting strange, surreal images. Commonly, he painted distorted versions of mundane objects, such as his Persistence of Memory, in which he painted melting clocks. In addition, he created artwork that, through other mediums, which purpose was to shock and surprise his audiences as well as disturb. Dali was not an ordinary individual and was passionate about his art as well as his political views. He was suspended and later expelled from his school for misconduct, as well as his refusal to take his final exam, as he argued that he was already a successful painter and knew more than his teachers. Salvador Dali also painted The Face of War in response to the wars. The Face of War shows a rotting face in the desert with smaller versions of the face enclosed inside the eyes as well as the mouth. There are vines growing through the hair and snakes protruding from the side of the face, almost as though a reference to Medusa, a monster in Greek mythology. The expression of the face represents the pure shock and fear of war. Although the eyes are closed, it is easy to tell that the face is terrified and affected by war. The eyebrows are wrinkled inwards, maybe also implying confusion in addition to fear. Dali was obviously affected by war, and this is one of his direct responses, painted in 1941 during World War II. Another great artist of the time was Otto Dix, a German surrealist who painted Shock Troop Advance Under the Gas from the War in 1924. Otto Dix was famous for his socio-political criticism in his artwork. He fought in World War I. His artwork captures the severity and intensity of war through the eerie figures and powerful images. He left art school to fight in the war. Afterwards, he was declared degenerate by the Nazis and therefore was no longer allowed to be an artist and teacher. Later on in his art career, after the end of World War II, his artwork became less intense and more soft and religious. Shock Troops Advance Under Gas from the War is a very powerful painting that demonstrates the monstrosities of war. There are people in gas masks, however, they no longer appear human, rather like monsters. While World War I was going on, it was often noted that the people were no longer human. They were beasts and killing machines. This painting shows that very idea well, while also demonstrating the expressionist style. During the rise of fascism and the Nazi Party in Germany, the Degenerate Art exhibition was opened by the Nazis. This exhibition was put up as a way to make fun of art that was not German art. This included the work of Jewish painters as well as other paintings. The exhibition displayed abstractionism, the Bauhaus style, Cubism, Dadaism, Expressionism, and the New Objectivity. The Degenerate Art exhibition became the most popular art exhibit in Germany, and then moved beyond Germany. As a means of propaganda, Hitler displayed modern art in his German museum in the most unflattering way that he possibly could. In doing so, his goal was to denounce modern art and make it appear childish and unskilled. His view, and that shared with other members of the Nazi Party, was that art should reflect the ideals of the society. Therefore, anything that showed self-expression or critique of the society was not allowed. Rather, he favored artists like Arno Breker, Joseph Thorak, and Adolf Ziegler, whose works portrayed the German ideals, glorifying the Nazi Party and Hitler himself. Adolf Ziegler was the president of the Reich Chamber of Visual Arts. He opened the Degenerate Art exhibition 8 days after Hitler inaugurated Germany's art exhibitions. These German art exhibitions were meant to showcase purely German art. This did not include any modern art. Hitler described modern art as the monstrous offspring of insanity, impudence, ineptitude, and sheer degeneracy. Hitler used propaganda to present modern art in the most derogatory way that he could. This was part of his plan to purify Germany through his fascist ways and national pride. Modern art was a new way of expression that Hitler disapproved because it wasn't German enough. When the art exhibition was inaugurated, Hitler made a speech discussing his views of what he called degenerate art. In his speech, he said, "The Jewish discovery that art was just a matter of period was for them a godsend. Theirs could be the art of the present time. Theirs was a small art, small in form and substance, and at the same time intolerant of the masters of the past and the rivals of the present. There was a conspiracy of incapacity and mediocrity against better work from any age." This point that Hitler is making in his speech is absolutely ridiculous. He is saying that Jewish art, simply because it was created by someone who is Jewish, is automatically categorized into degenerate art. It is appalling that his hatred for the Jews is so strong that it appears in every aspect of his fascist campaign, even art. In his speech, he also mentioned that art was said to be an international experience, and thus all comprehension of its intimate association with the people was stifled. It was said that there was no such thing as the art of a people, or better, of a race. There was only the art of a certain period. Thus it was not the Greeks who created the art of Greece, Romans the art of Rome. In each art, a particular period had found its expression. Art is a time-conditioned phenomenon. So today there is not a German or a French art, but a modern art. This is to reduce art to the level of fashions in dress, with the motto, every year something fresh. Impressionism, Futurism, Cubism, perhaps also Dadaism. These newly created art phrases would be comic if they were not tragic. This quotation is important because it shows how Hitler, in his speeches, used words to twist the truth into something that sounds credible, but in actuality is completely false. For example, the art of the Greeks and the art of the Romans were completely different styles of art that were not created to appeal to everyone. The Greek art was meant to appeal to the Greek aesthetics and cultural beauty. The Roman art was meant to appeal to the Roman aesthetics and cultural beauty. But more than that, it is important and also terrifying to see how Hitler was able to speak to people and allow them to believe anything that he wanted. Modern art was just as much a way of expression as what he called German art, but he used it to bring himself and his party up while also putting Jewish and modern art down. Art has always been a way of expression that doesn't require explanation by way of words. It is whatever the audience wants it to be. Hitler is essentially telling the German people what is beautiful and what isn't, which defeats the purpose of art entirely.